As I said in the introduction, this isn't the club you wanted to join. And I just wanted to maybe think about unpacking a little bit a few of the reasons about why the idea of childlessness can be so scary to contemplate after trying to conceive. It's also really hard to contemplate for those who haven't been on a trying to conceive journey, because there are many people who become childless who never even got the chance to sort of try and have a baby. There are so many ways you can end up childless. I think perhaps there is a lot of magical thinking in the experience of trying to conceive when it's a difficult journey. When I look back on my own time of hoping to become a mother, it took me a long time to realize this after, when I was really processing my childlessness. But one day I realized that even though I had been through between 11 and 15 years of trying to conceive, even though I had unexplained infertility, I never, ever, ever used the word infertile about myself. And not even in my own mind. I never thought of that. I never sought out any support around infertility. I never looked for an infertility forum or group. I was someone who was one day going to be a mother. There was absolutely no doubt in my mind whatsoever. Literally no doubt at all. Yes, it was taking longer than planned. Yes, I was really puzzled as to why it happened, but it was definitely going to happen. And so also, even the word childless had never entered my vocabulary. I was someone who was one day going to become a mother. That's what all of my focus was on. All of my thinking around planning my life, even, after my marriage broke down, there would have been some really smart things to have done at that time around supporting myself through that process. Maybe being a little bit more wise with the small amount of money I came out after splitting everything in two. But I was just like, I swear, I even thought I was just kind of in between husbands, that I would just find someone else and we would sort of, we would do IVF and we would have a baby and on we would go. I mean, as a feminist, I cannot believe how kind of unbelievably old-fashioned and Mad Men my sort of internal scripts were. I'm kind of really embarrassed by them. But because of this magical thinking trance that I was in, one of the really hard things is I didn't consider what my life might be like if it didn't happen. I didn't make any plans for that. Every decision I made, should I take this job or that job? Should I live in this place or that place? Oh, well, this job might provide maternity leave. Oh, this job, it's in a kind of cleaner air place, so there's less it'll be better it'll be better for the children. I called it later psychologically nesting. I was always preparing my life for the children that were going to be a part of it. And I never allowed myself to plan the alternative. So it wasn't like I had, well, if it works out and if it doesn't work out, no. So when I tried to imagine what, this childless life that suddenly was in front of me, it was just a void. There was nothing there. I had no hopes, no dreams, no ambitions for it. And that was terrifying. So kind of holding on to the dream of motherhood, it was familiar, it was comforting. I also thought if I even contemplate childlessness, somehow that is going to nix my chances of motherhood. That's the magical thinking as well. So it's like imagine it maybe at the corner of my eyes, there might have been an idea that maybe I would end up without children. It's like, nope, not going to look there. Not going to, if really interesting things came up, like a job somewhere really interesting, or some kind of extraordinary opportunity that actually kind of somewhere excited me, I wouldn't allow myself to be excited about it. I wouldn't allow myself to go there. So you can imagine that there was a really scary sort of void around what childlessness might be. And that got filled up by these awful ideas that society has about childless women, which makes it really, really hard to contemplate that this is what you're stepping into. So I guess for me, step one, which was facing up to what in psychotherapeutic terms is called the spoiled identity of childlessness. It's like, wow, that sounds nice. It's really rough. Culturally and socially, childlessness carries a lot of stigma. Now, there are some really deep psychological reasons for this and psychosocial reasons that we won't really get into now. But the fact is, the really important thing to know is they're not true. They're not gravity. They're just very, very antiquated beliefs that come from our earliest sort of imaginings as humans, our earliest tribal beginnings. And the idea that, there's something deviant and dangerous about childless women, that they had to be kept away from the fertile women. There's a kind of a fear that somehow there's something slightly wrong with childless women. Now, this is unconscious. Most people don't even know they're carrying this, but you may well be carrying it about yourself. I remember once in 2012, I gave a public talk, and I found that giving public talks was a way that women could come towards my work without it, as scary as like coming to a meetup or coming to a group where, it's like, I'm going to talk, and then they could come in and they could sit down in rows and they could listen to me, and they knew they could leave at any time. And it's like, I was because I was standing up at the front of the room, I was like taking responsibility for the event. They didn't have to say anything. And actually nearly all of them would stay, and then we'd all go to the bar afterwards, and then we'd have, a lot of connections. But they were really, really scared to be in the room with other childless women. And someone put up her hand after the talk and said, I nearly didn't come because I thought the room would be full of weeping weirdos. Yeah. And she says, and now I'm here, I can see actually it's just a really normal bunch of women, actually a really great bunch of women. But she had internalized society's projection of what other women are like, other childless women are like. It's not true. We're just women. We're just women for whom the desire to be a mum, for whatever reason, didn't work out. And, infertility, miscarriage, and baby loss are part of the story of how women become childless. But there are many, many other ways too. So, it's like, if this is the identity I have to step into. So being a mother is, the identity is seen as a good one, the good mother. It's something that's respected and applauded in our culture, even if it's not necessarily, once you've had the baby and you're raising a child, not actually as supportive as it gives the illusion it's going to be when it's just talking about the concept of motherhood. But childless women are just women. Mothers are just women, One isn't good, one isn't bad. We're all just imperfect human beings muddling through this very strange experience of life. And you will find women within the childless community that you really, really like, and you'll find others that you don't vibe with. That's okay. If we'd been mums, we would have known lots of other mums. Doesn't mean every single one would have been like a new best buddy. And it's going to be the same with childless women. You'll find some that you really, really click with, and some that, you're both childless, but that's kind of all you've got in common. So you will find your people. I think that's really important. And we're not a bunch of weirdos. We're just women who are struggling to come to terms with an unchosen thing in life. Now, what is behind all of this? Okay, there's a big word coming up, pronatalism. Pronatalism is a very, very strange word, and you think, well, why haven't I heard that? And pronatalism is the ideology that values birth, and you think pro-birth, nothing wrong with that. I certainly wanted to have a child. You wanted to have a child. What's wrong with being pro-birth? Nothing wrong with it. Unfortunately, pronatalism operates by kind of putting on a pedestal the identity of being a mother, by devaluing people who aren't parents, particularly non-mothers. And it's everywhere all around us. It's in the water. I mean, in fact, when people say to me, ideology, I'm not sure I signed up for the course for this. Well, what is ideology? Well, if you asked a fish, what's the water? How's the water today? and this is a talking fish, it would say, what's water? That's ideology. It's the water that we swim in, the cultural water we swim in, that tells us how the world operates, what the belief system are that we've all decided is reality. And in pronatalism, mother equals good, childless or child-free equals bad. And this is reinforced in so many ways in the culture. And I'm afraid it's kind of been weaponized by social media and capitalism and consumerism. So there are going to be resources you can explore to unpack a little bit more about that. But I just want you to know that pronatalism is the engine of making you feel bad about being childless. And once you can see it, and once you can kind of mentally unpick those hooks from your brain, that you will start to experience an enormous amount of liberation. And actually, it doesn't really help mums either, because pronatalism gives the idea that pregnancy and maternity are easy and delightful, and that motherhood is always delightful and fulfilling and meaningful. It's not. Pregnancy and maternity can be really challenging. We know that. Motherhood can be heartbreaking and challenging and wonderful and meaningful and meaningless and a complete pain in the ass. You know, all of those things. Life is complex, but pronatalism gives this very simple lens, and it serves to drive a wedge between mothers and women without children. And part of my work, particularly the future of my work, is really building those bridges, because I think that divide really doesn't serve us as women. We have much more in common than not, and we can be much more supportive to each other than we currently are, and that goes both ways. So that's just a little bit to help you understand about maybe why entering into this intellectually, emotionally, unconsciously feels really challenging. That's really normal. That's going to take time for you to unpick yourself, and we'll share some resources with you to go deeper in that. So yeah, I hope that helps to start to unpick really some quite complex things in just a few short words.